What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. So we have big news to cover today. As you've all heard, Ivan Demidov has officially signed his entry-level contract with the Montreal Canadiens for 3 years. The first year being for the remaining portion of this season, plus playoffs. And as projected on the screen, as announced today by the Montreal Canadiens, Ivan Demidov is taking number 93, which is a symbolic number for the Habs because, in 93 was the last time they won the Stanley Cup, and they're potentially going back to the playoffs this year. It is not officially confirmed, but it takes them 3 points to get there, and there's 4 games remaining. So odds are yes, but still a wait and see. But nonetheless, exciting news on Demidov. Luca, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I'm ecstatic. Like you have no idea how excited I am for this kid to come in. They drafted this guy 5th overall in 2024. He was touted by many scouts as arguably the best player not playing in the NHL. This guy's exciting. He's deceptive. He's, one of the most dynamic forwards I think I've ever watched, and I've watched a little bit of SKA games this year, not a whole lot because obviously the time zones and whatever, it's not always convenient to get games. But this kid, man, on every highlight reel that I've seen, he looks fantastic. Like he genuinely looks like a superstar already, and he hasn't even played a game in the NHL. And I know, look, Habs fans are excited. I'm excited. I think the hype is warranted for a kid of this caliber, of this stature, with everything that I think Montreal's gone on over the last couple of years, the rebuild and, drafting and tanking and all that stuff, being in a position where the Canadiens are currently at this year, pretty much with 1 foot almost inside the Stanley Cup, the playoff line, and almost there, 3 points behind Ottawa for the wild card spot. The 95 points is 90 points is the clinching spot. So Montreal's not there yet, like Zach mentioned, but they're gonna hopefully get there over the next 4 games. It's exciting times for Montreal, right? We're a young team. There's a lot of promise. Lane Hutson's looked really good this season. Suzuki's taken an extra step. Cole Caulfield scored more than 35 goals. He's at 37 on the year, right? There's a lot to be excited about for Montreal, and now you're adding a player in Ivan Demidov who can come in, slot in straight into your top 6, and potentially make even an instant impact. And I think that that's a big thing for the Canadiens, right? We're talking about, a team, like I said before, that's in the midst of potentially making the playoffs. And, you get to add a player of Ivan Demidov's caliber. And if you look at Brian Bader's, more model for kind of how he does player comparisons, he's comparing him a lot to the similarities of Patrick Kane, right? Like this is not a player that we're just talking about, say, this guy's going to be a top 6 forward. Like he genuinely has the potential to be the best player on the Canadiens and also be one of the best players in the league. And
absolutely.
And that's where I think the excitement comes from Habs fans. Is it's not like, Montreal hasn't experienced elite level talent like they have this season, right? Nick Suzuki's going to probably hit 90 points. Lane Hutson is probably the favorite for the Calder, right? Like we're seeing a change of pace in Montreal. We're seeing a change in the system in Montreal. And now you're adding a player of Ivan Demidov's caliber to this lineup just as you're about to potentially make it to the playoffs. Like that's huge for this team. And I think that Habs fans are just excited for not only what the rest of the season is going to look like, but for the future of this team, because there's a lot of promise and there's a lot of hype, and we're all very excited. So we'll see. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Exciting is definitely the exciting. A big revelation is another thing I'd have to say, is because the internal expectation for the Montreal Canadiens was not to necessarily make the playoffs, but to be in the mix. That's what was said by Kent Hughes before the beginning of the season. Right. And they had a terrible first couple of months up until December. This was one of the worst. They were at a point where they're one of the worst teams record-wise in the league. And then from January on, they went on a run. They a great run of about 7 to 10 games, and then they kind of fell off again. And then they showed how resilient they are as a group, and they showed that they are for real. Lane Hudson maintained the level of elite play throughout the whole NHL season. This kid hasn't skipped a beat. He's a rookie. I mean, yes, he played 2 games in the regular season last year, but he is by all means a rookie and probably going to be winning the Calder this year. He's been incredible, and a lot of growth from Cole Caulfield as having more of a complete player, and obviously getting back to great scoring habits as he may or may not hit the 40 goal mark this year. I know he's close. I believe he's at 37.
Yeah, he scored 37 last night.
Yeah, so he's at 37 now. Slav is, he's still a player in development, but he's, on track for a 50-point season a second time around. Line is great on the power play. Suzuki is proving he could be a top 12, top 10 center in this league. Like there's been a lot of internal growth with the Habs this year, and now it's kind of pushed the timeline, and now you're in a position where you're right at the cutoff line to make the playoffs. You need a couple more games or 2 games at minimum to get there. And for the Habs, you adding a guy like Demidov is just like, this is like a trade deadline acquisition, but you don't have to give away draft picks for it.
Agreed.
He comes in. The sky is the limit for this guy. He was playing pro in the KHL obviously this year. Played some playoff games this year. We showed the score, the stat sheet before, but this guy 5 points in 6 playoff games this year was very much close to a point per game. If you look at more of his points per 60, because he didn't get the most ice time for a while with his team in Russia, because situation over there where the team knew that he wasn't going to be staying there long term, and didn't really want to do the Habs any favor of developing this guy. So regardless of that, he performed to an amazing level, and now he's going to be joining the lineup officially. We don't know when. I don't think it's
as of Monday. Their rumor has it that due to immigration issues and stuff like that, it could be that he officially joins the team Friday in Toronto, when the Habs, after their game against the Sens, will travel to Toronto. He'll join the team in Toronto, but it likely won't play until Monday against Chicago. That would likely be his first game of the season.
Okay. So he's going to get
Hudson.
Exactly. So he's going to get a very, very short stint at the end of the regular season, and then then he'll be, more likely than not entering the playoffs, starting game 1 of the playoffs with the Habs. But if you look at their lineup again here, like, I'm going to give my take on where I think he'll slot in. I think it's fairly obvious in the sense that, the second line hasn't been working too great for the Habs this year. They haven't been able to produce consistently 5-on-5. I know Line has been great on the power play. 5-on-5 a bit meh. Newhook has been disappointing, and obviously Kapanen is there now because of some injuries. But I think that for Demidov, it might be the perfect place for him to slot in and try to get that second line going. Like, he's a skill guy. You're going to put him in a skill role on a line that beyond the top line could, he could add a bit of juice to that line. The top line, I don't think they'll break it up. This line has been working for almost two full seasons now. So I don't think they're going to be shaking that up. And then for the power play, maybe they start him off on the second unit for the time being, and then maybe he gets accustomed to the first at some point. But it's hard for me to say that they would make an adjustment to the first, just because of how dynamic it's been. Hudson, obviously the power play quarterback, Line with the big shot, Caulfield shot option as well. Suzuki obviously, is going to not be sitting that place. And Slav is their big net front presence. So maybe they slap him onto the second unit to start the season. But what do you think? Do you think the alignment is going to be a little bit different than what I'm suggesting?
Not really. I mean, look, I agree with you. I think he needs to play top 6 minutes from the get go. Like you mentioned before, I don't think the second line has particularly been great for Montreal all season. Like you mentioned, Line has been really good on the power play, not so great 5-on-5. Alex Newhook's been okay. I mean, he's a guy that I think is probably better suited as your third line center over your second line center, given the circumstances that you're in. But I mean, he's not bad. He hasn't necessarily been, let's say, horrible in that place. I think he's played well in the minutes that he's played. I also think the guys below him, like Dvorak and Evans, have been able to step up as well when he hasn't been at his best. So that does play a little bit of a factor. But what I like is I think adding Ivan Demidov to the second line and bringing Kapanen down to the fourth line with Pezzetta being a healthy scratch. I think what it'll do is it'll really make that second line, finally have an identity, right? Because you're going to have a sniper in Patrick Laine. You're going to have potentially a pass first guy in Demidov, although he can shoot the puck as well, right? And then you have a speedy centerman in Alex Newhook who can win faceoffs and can be a little bit skillful at times too. So I think that second line could work, and I think it would be a really good, let's say, second line, because it would allow for Demidov to be able to still play his game and be creative, but at the same time, he's going to have a shooter on his line. So if he's not someone that's necessarily, thinking of shooting the puck, well, all you got to do is give it to Laine and get him open. And if Laine is open and he's, in the right place, he can score. And then, you look at the power play, and it's like you mentioned before, right? That first power play unit, I mean, has been pretty good all year for Montreal. There's been times that it hasn't been at its best. I don't think you take Caulfield, Suzuki, or Laine off power play 2, power play 1. However, I do have a theory, and I don't know if this is going to happen this season or if it's going to be something that gets looked into next year when he's a full-timer. But I do think there's a possibility that Demidov could end up on PP1 at some point. And the reason I say that is, I look at their first power play unit, and the way I look at it is, although Laine has been really good, I don't necessarily believe he's the difference maker on that power play. I think if you bring in a guy like Demidov and you give him, you put him on the left half wall and you put Cole Caulfield in the one-timer spot where Laine is, and you still have Slav and Suzuki, playing their roles and their positions on the power play unit with Lane Hudson, I think that would be more dynamic than what Montreal currently has right now. That would push Patrick Laine to the second unit. But unfortunately, and this is going to sound, maybe people will disagree with me or not, Patrick Laine isn't the future of the Montreal Canadiens. And in my opinion, I honestly think that with the caliber that Ivan Demidov has, you're better off testing him on PP1 and seeing what you have with this guy and rolling your core on the power play than a guy like Patrick Laine. Because I think Laine, even on PP2, as long as he's given the puck in his position, he can shoot it from anywhere. So whether he has Cole Caulfield or Lane Hudson, I know they have chemistry together. At worst case, if Montreal wants to, throw Lane Hudson and make Lane Hudson play both power play units and just have Hudson pass Laine the puck on the second power play unit. Like, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But like, you know what I mean? I don't have a problem if Marty St. Louis decided, hey, Demidov, you're playing PP1 from game 1 and Laine is going to PP2, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I would be absolutely okay with it, even if he hasn't played a game, because I still think Montreal's better off giving Demidov all the tools and saying, here, run with it, than putting themselves in a position to where he has to play on the PP2 and he gets 30 seconds of ice time and he can't do anything with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do understand what you mean, but I think him on PP2, he would be the main distributor of the puck. The guy's obviously known to be super creative, and the likes of Mike Matheson and Alex Newhook are not doing it for you necessarily. He could spark the second unit a little bit. Gallagher has found a run of form in the later stage of the season. He hit the 20 goal and the 21 goal mark yesterday. Yep. Anderson is playing much better than he did last year, and he looks like he's found some of his confidence back. But I could see it. I could see that happening. For PP1, I kind of disagree, just in the sense that if you move Laine to PP2, unless you're going to give Hudson the second unit time, which I think is insane, because he's already a rookie who's playing 22, 23 minutes a night. You don't want to really put too much more on his play. They'll probably just make him do the full the probably gets the full 2 minutes anyways on PP1. But I think they'll probably leave Matheson on the second unit, and if you throw Laine there, then you don't really have the best guy to distribute him the puck, because not only have Hudson, who could distribute him the puck and who has done it very well all season. They've been like a magic connection. But, Caulfield, who's playing the opposite side, could disguise a lot with his shot and then finds Laine on the other. So that's always been a good option for them. So I don't see them moving from PP1. And if we go back to Demidov, in terms of Demidov and Demidov the player, I want to go back to the draft year, which was the most recent draft in 2024. Right. The thing with him is that, I think the Habs getting him at 5th overall, especially from what we've seen of him now playing pro, is a steal. And I think part of the reason for that is because there was only footage for pro scouts for different NHL franchises. The only basis they had to evaluate this player was based on the footage. There weren't any scouts who were allowed to go overseas and actually watch him. So the Habs took a gamble on this guy, but it looks right now, it's looking like if he comes in and he performs well, he's gonna have 2 games of regular season. And he looks great during the playoffs, are we gonna have a conversation now if he was the number 1 player from that draft class? Do you think that is gonna happen anytime soon?
I mean, I guess, but it's really tough to have that discussion, just because you're taking away from what Macklin Celebrini has done in San Jose, and I think Celebrini was always the clear-cut number 1 in that draft. No, I think regardless.
Yeah, I know. Celebrini is great, but I'm saying, would he be? Do you think he'll be put into that conversation with Celebrini?
I think he was already put in that conversation with Celebrini. I don't necessarily think he ever was taken out of that conversation with Celebrini. I think that until you don't see Ivan Demidov in a full season, I think it's hard for someone to turn around and say he would be the clear-cut number 1 overall pick. Now, listen, if he goes into the playoffs and wins the Conn Smythe Trophy and is Montreal's best and most scoring productive player, and Montreal somehow wins the Stanley Cup tomorrow morning, right? Or he ends up finishing the playoffs with like 6 games played and he has 12 points. Yeah, you can maybe have the conversation to say, you know what, he might have been the clear-cut number 1 overall pick. I think until then, it's a little bit tough to be like, who knows? Because even if he comes in and he struggles, I don't think it's a worry. And I think even if he comes in and plays the way he's expected to play, I still think you need to see a full season out of Demidov before you could turn around and say, you know what, he probably is better than Celebrini, or he's probably should have been the clear-cut number 1 pick. But I think he's already in that conversation. Like I said, right, this is a guy who was highly touted when he was drafted, and I think that a lot of teams made a mistake by passing on him. I think Columbus made that mistake. I think Chicago made that mistake.
Absolutely.
Anaheim made that mistake, right? And at the end of the day, like, this guy was the second best player in the draft. If you're comparing him and Celebrini, based on scouts, he was the second best player in the draft. Could he be the best player in the draft? Absolutely. I think he absolutely can. But it's about trying to temper the expectations, right? Let him see how he takes over North American ice. What's his, how he does, how he translates at the NHL level. But obviously, if he continues the production that he had from when he was in Russia and he translates that over to the NHL, absolutely, I think he can be not miles better than Celebrini, because Celebrini is a very good player, but he can definitely be the clear-cut number 1 overall pick and probably push Celebrini down to number 2, right? That could see that happening, yes.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Celebrini. He's had a fantastic rookie season for a team right now that is one of the worst in the league by a margin. And, there's not much around them, and he kind of went into a bad situation. All the pressure in the world to perform as he is, a first overall pick, the spotlight is just bigger because of that. He's already known to be the future face of that franchise, and he came in and he's almost a point per game. He looks great. He's got all the skill in the world. He's got a great balanced game. I think he's definitely gonna he'll remain in that conversation for the foreseeable future. But
Yeah, of
it,
course.
it remains to be seen if Demidov is going to get into that one too. And obviously for Levchinov, he didn't get, he's playing in the A now. But
No,
we're gonna see.
he's up with the big club now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he got called up. He's playing with the big club. Ever
Okay.
since the Seth Jones trade, he's been with Chicago.
Okay. How
But
many
yeah,
games has he played?
10, I think. I don't even know. Wait, let me search
Yeah,
that.
but I think
But
for
yeah,
him next year is gonna be a big telling tale if he is the player
he's
who
played
they.
14 games. He has 5 points. Yeah, 14 games. He has 5 points. Levchinov.
Apologies for that. I put Chicago off radar after I evaluated their standing. But last thing we could talk about is here some details for his entry level deal. I've had it
Yeah.
projected on the screen for a little bit now, so it's 775 in year one. He obtained the signing bonus, and there is another stipulation bonus for the first year, and is if he wins the Conn Smythe Trophy, he gets a 500K bonus, which
Yeah,
is
ballsy.
it's ballsy, but it's also if you're winning the Conn Smythe and your bonus is only 500K, what are we doing here? So it's kind of a hilarious move from GM Ken Hughes, but nonetheless, it's interesting to note that this is an actual bonus clause in his contract for his
Yeah.
first year.
Well, I think what it does, right, is it's kind of a funny thing because it motivates the player to go out there and play his best, right? Like, I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on the kid. I mean, I people were tracking his flights and he's not even in Montreal yet. Like, the hype is real with this kid, and I'm not going to justify Montreal fans being crazy because I understand it and I get it, and especially with where Montreal's been for so many years and just not being able to have elite talent, truly elite talent, apart from Carey Price, obviously. Um, and you could argue PK Subban and maybe Kovalev. But like besides those guys, Montreal really hasn't had elite talent. And now you have Lane Hudson. You're gonna have Nick Suzuki. You could argue Cole Caulfield is not there yet, but could eventually get there. And now you have Ivan Demidov. Like that's this team, the fan base is so excited, and I think even just for the clause, right? Like for Kent Hughes to put that Conn Smythe clause, like I think to some extent it's because he believes that he can do it, right? Because
Yeah,
you don't give a player, you don't just give anybody a Conn Smythe clause. Like if you're giving the player that type of responsibility, it's because you believe that he can actually do it.
you're putting a
And
lot of faith in the player by doing that.
yeah, and I think at some point as well for the Montreal Canadiens, it's one of those things that it's like, look, it motivates the player to be at his best. And look, I mean, he chose number 93. He's got a Conn Smythe clause. This kid has one vision in mind, being a Montreal Canadian, at least for this season, and that's to try to help this team win a cup, right? And what I love about what RG Media did and when they broke the news is that Ivan Demidov, the main reason, and Roman Rottenberg had an interview with BPM Sports and even RDS, and he confirmed that Ivan Demidov, when he was asked what he wanted to do as his next step, he asked Roman Rottenberg and he asked SKA to let him go play in the NHL because he wanted to play in the playoffs against Alex Ovechkin. And he said, and he wanted to go and play against his idol because Ovi had just broken the record and just beat Gretzky for the most goals ever scored by a player. And Demidov wanted to experience that and be able to play against Alex Ovechkin. And I think that to me, right, whether that's the factor or not, I don't believe that that was the factor, but I do believe that the fact that the kid mentioned that to his head coach as a goal of his that he wanted to do, I think speaks a lot about how excited the kid is to come to Montreal. I also think this kid is passionate and wants to win and wants to be in the biggest stage possible and be able to do it. And I think that this is the type of player that Montreal needs in this market. A guy who is going to take the pressure that goes around him and is going to be able to thrive around it, right? We look at what Lane Hudson's done this season and the level of commitment that Lane Hudson has to be able to get on the ice every single day, right? Whether it's an optional or a full practice, and try to improve his game and play every single hockey game like, he looks and he's becoming one of the best players on the team. Like, this is the type of players that Montreal needs, right? Nick Suzuki taking the bull by the horns and becoming Montreal's star after the Four Nations. Like, this is the pressure that comes with this market. This is the intensity that comes with this market. And having guys like Nick Suzuki, having guys like Lane Hudson, having guys like Ivan Demidov, hopefully, who are going to thrive under this pressure, this is what's going to make Montreal successful. And that's why I think there's a lot of excitement and a lot of hype, is because you're seeing the tide turn, and you're seeing Montreal at a point where they're like, if they can add a couple of pieces here and there in the offseason and maybe get some consistent goaltending, this team could be a knock on for the playoffs next year. And like, it's not even going to be close, right? So there's a lot of excitement. I think there's a lot of belief in this group. And I think that there's the best is yet to come for Montreal, and we're just only beginning. And Ivan Demidov is going to be a big part of that. So excited to see what goes on. But I mean, listen, I hope he wins the Conn Smythe. That'd be great, because then that would mean the Habs win the cup or get to the final. So there's a lot of positives if that happens.
I think that's overly optimistic, and as a Pens fan myself, obviously, you know who I'm rooting for in all of this. But you mentioned
you got a dream, right?
Yeah, of course, you have to dream. It could happen.
Ottawa's in the playoffs, Zach. Doesn't mean Ottawa can't make the final.
Ottawa is definitely gonna. I think Ottawa definitely has a chance. I think I don't want to make this a video about the Sens, but I think as a group they've been waiting for this moment to finally, especially for Shabbat and Tkachuk, to finally play playoff hockey, and to have a guy, a character like Tkachuk in the playoffs, and just the culture change that they've had from last season. This looks like a team that's ready, so I'm excited to see what they do. And final thought for me, you mentioned the Habs. You mentioned the future of this team. Talking about Suzuki, Caulfield, Hudson, etc. But there's all the other guys like a David Reinbacher, who's hasn't had the best of luck in terms of his injuries. But if you have a guy like that slot in, and now the pressure is less with a guy like Hudson being the number one defenseman. You add him to a core with Caden Gooley and Alex Carrier. I think is going to be there for quite a bit of time now. You could be looking at a very, very formidable decor as well, other than their exciting forwards, who obviously we mentioned, and Jacob Fowler could be your number one goalie in net.
Yeah, so in the future, if he pans out, for sure.
Yeah. So maybe I think we could officially say, I hate to say this, but it looks like the Habs playoff contention window, their Stanley Cup window, we'll say, has officially opened up.
I wouldn't say that yet.
Honestly, I'm gonna say it will, because I'm very confident that Demidov is gonna translate, because he had this, because he dominated in a full year pro. And if you just add him to the core that they already have thriving, I think, this team, consider their age, consider, Martin St. Louis, who's a great coach, consider all the pieces. I think, look, it's a safe bet to say that this is a team that'll be a Stanley Cup contender. I don't know when, but at least right now they're a playoff contender, and I see them being a Stanley Cup contender. Maybe there's things I need to see in terms of the growth, but maybe in a couple of years we'll see it.
Right. No, I agree, and I think there's a lot of positives. Like I said, I don't want to push and say the cup windows here for Montreal, or the let's say contending status is here for the Canadiens yet. I think there's still some decisions that need to be made, but yeah, Demidov can help them get there for sure. But yeah, we'll see. The Canadiens aren't in the playoffs yet. There's 4 games to go. They got Ottawa on Friday. They got Toronto on Saturday. They got Chicago on Monday, and then they end off the season with Carolina on Wednesday. It's, if they get help from the out-of-town scoreboards, it could be done as early as Friday.
Yeah.
If not, Montreal's going to have to basically, fight and claw their way in. But they're 8 points ahead. So as of right now, as of the time that we're recording this, they're still 8 points ahead of, let's say the Rangers, who are fighting for the last wildcard spot. So the math looks good, but until it's not official, until that X isn't there, anything can happen. And we'll see what happens for the Canadiens. But if they do make the playoffs, I think it'll be exciting times for the city of Montreal. It'll be exciting times for the Bell Center, and it'll be exciting time for the fans and the players for sure. And that's what I think everyone's looking forward to, is a full barn of the Bell Center, being able to pack a hockey game for the playoffs in April.
And overpriced tickets.
Yeah, but you know what? Listen, they're worth it, man. In my opinion, they're worth it. To watch Ivan Demidov and Lane Hudson, they're worth it.
We'll end it on that note, Luca. So, guys, thank you so much for watching another video of the Young Guns podcast. We had to break the news to you. This is, especially us as being Montreal locals, is, you could see it, Luca's excitement clearly. This is big news. We had to cover it for you guys. We're gonna be posting as much as we can. In the following month, we're gonna have our playoff matchup breakdowns from round to round. So guys, stay posted with our content. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Zach
and Luca.
So peace, guys. Take care.
Peace.